Okay. All right. So we're talking about what is my food, and we're going to look at how to balance a plate. So if you've got carbohydrate, protein, and fat, which are the big nutrients, they're macronutrients, we need to be certain that we are all inclusive in, when we plan our meals, incorporating those. So let me ask this. Do all of you feel confident that you create balanced meals when you plan them? Okay. Has anybody tried an Atkins diet? All protein, no carbs. Okay. All nutrients, the carb, the protein, the fat, they all are vital. Okay, they all have a place on the plate. Because our bodies, seeing that you have a macronutrient, carb, a protein, and a fat, those are made up of micronutrients, the little small parts and pieces. Okay, each of you and myself, we are macrosomic. We have big bodies, okay? Our bodies are made up of also micro components. The micro components of those food nutrients feed our micro components, okay? So when we think about planning a meal, we have to consider the cellular level. Okay, everything happens. I mean, for you to breathe, to function on a healthy basis, you have to feed your body at that very small, minute level. Okay, so that's why it's important that we incorporate all three of those nutrients. They all three provide something different. Okay, they're not interchangeable. All right. Carbohydrates break down into sugar. Okay, that's what fuels the body. Fat breaks down into fatty acids. Okay, that is necessary for hormones. Okay, in order for your body to produce hormones and do a lot of other of the functions in the body, you've got to have fat. Okay, certain kinds of fat, but you've got to have fat in your diet. Protein breaks down into amino acids. That's what fuels our, helps keep our muscles from being broken down. Okay, so if you don't cover the bases and include all of those nutrients, you will become deficient, or you'll be suboptimal, I guess, is another way to put it. Your body won't function at its best without covering all three of those nutrients. So in order for you to put those on your plate in a balanced way, and we'll look at that in a minute, you got to first know what the food is that you're eating, right? So if you take a look at your sheet, the front side of that sheet explains that process. On your food label, and we've got lots of labels here, and we're going to look at each of them. On the food label, you have carbohydrate. You've got a lot of things listed. Always ignore those percentages. They mean not a darn thing to you, okay? Don't look at the percentages. They're not important. Because we don't all eat a 2,000 calorie diet, and it's a crazy way to look at what that particular food is providing you. Okay, so you don't worry about the percentages. What you want to look at in order to identify the food itself is you look at total fat, okay? You look at total carbohydrate, and you look at protein. Of those three, the largest number defines that food type. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So on here, I've kind of listed as well, as I said a moment ago, what the carbs are, the proteins, the fat, kind of what they do. In addition to fat being necessary for hormonal production, it also is a nutrient that helps you feel full. Okay? So if you've ever tried a fat-free diet, or a very, very low-fat diet, which back in the late 80s, early 90s, when that kind of philosophy became very mainstream, we all started kind of shying away from fat, eating more fat-free stuff. Our diets became very high in sugar. Okay, and that's actually what has caused the fattening of America, is the excessive amounts of sugar. Okay, not fat. Theoretically, it makes sense that if you cut the fat intake down, because 1 gram of fat has more calories than a gram of protein or carbohydrate, you would think, sure, I'm going to lose weight. Well, and you might, but we need certain types of fat in our diet, okay? Fat helps you feel full. If you've gone a whole day and tried to just eat plain vegetables with, no cheese or anything, or no other fat source, or you've just tried to eat fruit all day, or just carbohydrates, okay, so a bowl of cereal, just a bunch of starchy stuff, you're hungry, okay, it doesn't stick with you very long, all right? And so it's important that you incorporate some fat into your diet. Or healthy fats, canola oils, olive oils, those kinds of things. You don't want to overdo saturated fats and trans fatty acids. That's a whole nother talk, and we will have that one another time. So, looking at the food label, let's look at a few of them on here, okay? I want you to take a look at the very first one listed. 2 tablespoons is the serving size. So if I'm looking at a food label, the first thing that I'm going to do when I'm at the grocery store is see what my serving size is. I want to know, can I eat enough of this to make it worth my while? If it has too much in the way of calories and so forth, and I don't get to eat very much of it, I'm probably not going to buy it, okay? If it's something that I really like. And I can't, it's got to make sense. You want as much bang for your buck as you can get, okay? So, 2 tablespoons, and then I'm going to look at the calories, okay? Because again, I want to know how much of this can I eat, and what is it going to cost me? Then you want to, on this particular one, look at that first one. What is this? Is it a carb, a protein, or a fat? A fat. It's peanut butter. Okay? You need, at each meal, as a female, 25 to 30 grams of protein. Now, this can vary depending on the amount of working out you do. There are other factors that can go into play. But a bottom line for females is 25 to 30 grams of protein at breakfast, at lunch, and at dinner. Okay, you build your meal around protein. Men need 30 to 35 grams of protein. Now that doesn't mean, okay, great, I don't get my protein at breakfast, so I'm going to load up on it at lunch and dinner. You can't do that. If you're driving your car from here to California, you're not going to load your entire car full of enough gas to get you there without having to stop again. Okay? You have to, it's all about balance, moderation, and timing. Okay? You need to provide your body with the appropriate fuel from all of those different nutrients, carb, protein, and fat, throughout the day. Okay? Your body, you can't push a hold button and say, okay, hang on muscles, we'll get you covered later today. Okay? You want to cover yourself throughout the course of the day. Okay? So females, 25 to 30 grams of protein at breakfast, at lunch, and at dinner. Men, 30 to 35. So if you're using, yes.
So you need 25 to 30 grams for the day?
No, per meal.
Okay.
Yes. Per meal, at breakfast, at lunch, and at dinner. Okay? So now let's use this example here that we just looked at. The first thing that I asked you, and I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat meat. Okay, so I have to look at non-meat sources for protein. So I've had peanut butter today. Okay, I had some this morning, but I did have some protein powder as well with mine. Anyway, that was my source of protein. You want to meet we'll use 25 grams as an example, as our number that we're going to talk about, okay? If you're using if you've got to meet 25 grams of protein, and you're trying to use peanut butter, how much are you going to need to hit 25 grams of protein, provided you're using peanut butter as a protein?
8 tablespoons.
Like 3.5, like 6 and 7 tablespoons.
6 tablespoons. Okay, you need 6 tablespoons. Okay, that's about 600 calories. Now, I'm not an advocate for counting calories either. Okay, and I'll tell you why. There is a time and place. So let me back up, and I'll kind of contradict myself before I even say it. There is a time and place for counting calories, but it's not on the front end, okay? You've got to get yourself in a good place and having, you know, movement toward progress before counting calories makes any sense, and here's why. If you're hyper-focused on a number, okay, you're not able to create balance, all right? So an example of that would be if you're doing, and I'm not knocking Weight Watchers, because people can be successful with Weight Watchers, but if you have 25 points, or whatever the point system is, if you've got a certain number of points that you've got to hit for the day, and you know that strawberries, and I have no idea how many points they have, but let's use, we'll say 2 points as an example. If strawberries are 2 points, and it's a cup and a half for a serving, some people would say, I can eat as much of that as I want. I can load up, load up, load up. But where's your balance? Okay? All you have focused on is not exceeding 25 points, and you don't have any concept or thought process associated with what those points consist of. Does that make sense? So you want to think in terms of balance, and we'll look at what that looks like in a few minutes on a plate, okay? There is a time and a place for counting calories and being very specific and regimented, but that comes way into your process of making change. Okay, the very first thing you've got to do is begin to increase your level of awareness in regards to what does my breakfast consist of, what does my lunch consist of, and what does my dinner consist of. And is it balanced? Have I covered the bases? Okay, have I incorporated a protein of at least 25 grams if I'm a female or 30 if I'm a male? What are the veggies that I've got going on? What kind of carbohydrate source do I have, and where's my fat coming from? Okay, so once you get all that down and you're feeling good and comfortable about it, you've been doing it for quite a while, then we look at, okay, if your body now is not performing in the way that you feel it needs to, and I mean physical change in terms of performance when you look in a mirror. If your body is not morphing in the way that you're wanting it to, that is when we then go to, okay, let's look a little more closely at the composition. What are you doing in terms of your carbs? Are you a little off on you know, are you a little heavy on this side and a little light over here? What can we tweak to make it a little bit different, okay? But before we can do that, we have to have a great awareness of what the foods are that we're eating, okay? So what protein sources do you typically eat, and do you enjoy eating? What carbohydrate sources do you eat? And what what fat sources do you incorporate, okay? And then as you begin to kind of know, identify, and create a little list of those things, you can then begin to build very balanced meals. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's look at a few more food labels here. So the next one I want you to look at is this one right here, the top of the three in that little block. Okay, what is that? Is it a carb, a protein, or a fat?
Carb.
It's a carb. Okay. Keep that in mind. Okay. That's actually a yogurt right there. Okay, and it has fruit on the bottom. All right, we're gonna compare that to another yogurt here in just a second. Skip the one in the middle for just a moment. Look at the one at the very bottom. What is that? Those are both a Greek yogurt. Okay? One is a plain, non-fat Chobani Greek yogurt. That's the one on the bottom. The one on the top is a blueberry, non-fat Chobani yogurt, Greek yogurt. Okay? Greek yogurt is fabulous. Has anybody tried Greek yogurt? What did you think?
No matter what I put in it.
Okay, tell me, what about it is nasty? Is it the flavor, the texture, the consistency?
The aftertaste. I baked it in brownies, I mixed it with peanut butter, I put fruit in it, I put it in oatmeal.
Okay, did you sweeten it?
Yes, with Splenda and Truvia.
Okay. Something's wrong with your taste buds. You do hear that quite a lot. Okay, I encourage you to do you remember what brand you tried?
3 different kinds my wellness coaches tried to make me eat it.
Okay, all right. Well, good for her.
No,
Okay, Allison.
Allison.
Okay. All right. kudos to Allison for the definite trial there. Okay, don't let her jade you. Here's the deal. It is nasty if you don't sweeten it up and do it up right.
I
Okay, so
put in
here's,
brownies and everybody else liked it.
I did that actually this Thursday. I did not like them because I didn't like the pumpkin part of it. I did pumpkin brownies. Thought that sounded kind of good, but then I thought, well, it didn't taste so good. But it was like a cream cheese pumpkin little thing that swirled in there. Anyway, the brownie part was good. I just didn't like the pumpkin part. Anyway, here's how if I could still eat Greek yogurt, because I can't tolerate dairy. But here's how I used to do it. I would take frozen fruit. Okay, I would nuke it in the microwave, not to get it hot, but to knock the frozen out. Okay, and you got a juice, right? Because we're thawing it in the microwave. Then I take my little, and I prefer stevia. Split is fine. I prefer stevia extract, which K-A-L, the brand that's the brand I use. It's a little dropper. Okay, add a little dropper in there, and I'd stir it up. Then I would add my Greek yogurt and stir it in. Now what you can do with that, if you like the consistency of like Yoplait that's kind of runnier, you just don't put as much yogurt in there, or you keep a little of that extra juice. Okay? If you like it creamier and thicker, do you not like Greek yogurt back there on the floor? I see you're going.
No, I've never tried it.
Okay, well, I think it's good. It's not too much. But so then, or you put your berries in the fridge the night before and let them thaw out, so then you're not having to nuke anything. Anyway, you just stir it in, okay? The difference, and you sweeten it to the place that your taste buds are A-okay, all right? The difference that you're gonna have with that is, if you'll see on the top, okay, you said that was a carbohydrate. The one on the bottom is a protein. The difference is you have added sugar in the one on the top because they've got like 2 blueberries in there and then evaporated cane juice and some other stuff. Okay, that is sugar. Okay, so you have taken a source of protein and turned it into a sugary carbohydrate. Okay, when you add that on the bottom. Now someone might say, well, you're going to do the same if you add fruit to it yourself. Well, no, you're not adding fruit that's been sweetened with sugar and creating an issue in that way. Okay, you're adding naturally occurring sugar. Okay, so let's take a little bit closer look at this food label. Did you all know that the average American consumes a 5-pound bag of sugar every 2 weeks? Okay, it's true. The Dr. Peppers, the sweet teas, all that kind of stuff, that is added sugar. Do you also know that the rates of heart disease have increased not because of the fat we consume in our diet, but because of the sugar that we consume in our diet? So if there is ever a change that you want to make that will positively affect your overall health, it is cutting down on the amount of added sugar. Whether it is substituting some of your regular sodas and drinks with something that does not have sugar in it, or becoming more aware of where you're getting other added sugars, i.e. yogurt, okay, or any other similar item. I mean, there's added sugar in all kinds of stuff. In all these protein bars that everybody eats, loaded with sugar, okay? Elevated triglycerides. If you have elevated triglycerides, I suggest you take a look at how much sugar you're incorporating into your diet. Triglycerides are directly correlated with your carbohydrate intake, not even just sugar. Even if you're just eating carbs that are no added sugar, you still, if your diet is predominantly carbohydrate, you have high triglycerides, right there is your problem, okay? If you look at this, the one on the top, we've got 20 grams of sugar, okay? It's underneath the total carbohydrate. If you look at the one on the bottom, you have 7 grams of sugar. Well, the one on the bottom was just the plain non-fat Chobani Greek yogurt, right? So there is no added sugar in it. Well, all carbohydrates, anything that's dairy, milk, those kinds of things, are going to have fruit, some naturally occurring sugars. Okay, in milk, it's lactose. Okay, so that's where those 7 grams come from. So how can you tell? All right, if you know that yogurt is going to have some sugar in it just because it's yogurt and it was born that way, if you're looking at the one on the top, you then come down to the bottom. Okay, you go, okay, yeah, I've got 20 grams of carbohydrate there, and I've got 20 grams of sugar. Where is it coming from? So then you come under the ingredients. Okay, that's when your eyeballs go from carbs, sugar, drop them to the ingredient list. Okay? So you see non-fat yogurt. Okay, that's cool. That's not sugar. You move on down. Okay, you've got some lactobacillus. And those are active cultures, probiotics. They're healthy for the gut. Okay. Now you get to the fruit on the bottom. Okay, so what's in it? Blueberries, evaporated cane juice, pectin, locust bean gum, and natural flavor. Okay, that's your added sugar. All right? Only probably 2 of those grams of sugar have come from the blueberries. Okay? So 9 would be naturally occurring if you take the 7 from the yogurt and then add the 2 from the blueberries. The rest of that, 11 grams of that sugar is added. Okay, do you know what the American Heart Association recommends daily for added sugar? Men, 36 grams per day of added sugar. Okay, so if you're having this, you've already just had 11. Okay, women, 24. 24. Children, 9. 9. I guarantee you that is not happening in your household if you've got children. And it doesn't happen in my household. It is hard to find foods that, and believe me, I mean, I am a sugar Nazi. Okay, I'm not a, now that doesn't, I mean, my kids, we went to Dunkin' Donuts, Krispy Kreme, this has been a while back. My son goes, are you sick? I mean, Mom, are you okay? And I said, I'm fine. He goes, I just cannot believe that you're taking us to Krispy Kreme. I'm like, it's not that you can't ever have it. It's about moderation, okay? All right? It's not crack cocaine, all right? You know, or heroin, okay? I mean, it's not an illicit drug. It's basically the point that I'm making. We don't do that in moderation, okay? There's no way to balance that in there, okay? These kinds of things you can balance in there, okay? We have to live our lives, and you don't want to be, you know, walking around this world completely deprived of some tasty things, okay? But we just don't want to overdo it, all right?
So what was the count on men and women for blood sugar again?
For women, it's 24, and for men, 36.
That's the average.
Added sugar per day. Okay. So the one in the middle. Let me see if I can figure out what it is. It is tuna, you're right. See, and I have the answers on the other sheet. See, normally on my PowerPoint, I have them better lined up. Okay, so this one is, you're right, it's tuna. And it's, obviously, it's a protein, okay? Okay, now, flip over to the back side of the page. Let's go down to, let me ask you this, and then we're going to go to the one in the middle, because I just find this one really fascinating. How do you know if a carbohydrate's a good carbohydrate?
Brown or white?
No. But that's a good start. There's plenty of brown.
Like whole grains versus processed sugars?
Exactly. Does anybody know somebody who can't tolerate gluten? Does anybody know somebody who has GI problems? I mean, we all know people with GI problems. I mean, I've got GI problems. Okay, let me tell you where a lot of that stems. Our diets are incredibly processed and highly refined, okay? Think about what you gravitate toward when you want a snack. I mean, it's typically something that's in a cabinet that you just go open it up, grab it, and start eating, right? those are things that are processed. They've got lots of junk added to them, okay, because they need to be stable and last a real long time at the grocery store, well, in the truck, prior to getting to the grocery store, and then sit on the shelf in the grocery store until you buy it, and then you take it home, and then you open it, so it's got to have all this freshness stuff in there to keep it from going stale immediately. Okay, so all of those things, if it is going to preserve a food, what do you think it's doing in your body? Preserving. And it is not, your body is not going to like that for too long. Okay, a lot of the intolerances that we have these days, a lot of the, I don't even call them allergies, but some of them are legitimate food allergies. Okay, but food issues are predominantly derived from our excessively high intakes of processed foods, okay? Your body wants to take a food that is in its most natural state and manipulate it and break it down. Your body doesn't, on a regular basis, because if this continues to happen, it's just like if you break your leg and you put a cast on it, you're not using it for a while, that leg's weaker. Once the cast comes off, you've got to rebuild it and rehabilitate it in order to get it strong again. If you don't allow your gut and your body to do the functioning, the processing, the breaking down, the manipulating, the digesting, the tearing apart of these foods and nutrients because it's occurred in a factory prior to getting in the box before you bought it, your body's going to lose the ability to do that very well. Okay? That's where a lot of these issues are coming from. Okay? Our bodies are just totally losing the ability to do these things. It's a communication process for the most part. Okay? We all know that our bodies are driven predominantly by hormones. Okay? The hormonal processes that are fired off in the body occur based on the types of foods that you eat. If you're eating foods that are not speaking the same language as your body, okay, so the hormonal responses that those are going to trigger are incorrect, your body is not going to have that cascade of hormonal responses that allows your body to digest, process, utilize, and operate those nutrients in the way that they're supposed to. Does that make sense? Okay, so you may have heard if you shop the perimeter of the grocery store, that's the most ideal place to go, right? Because those are the things that have a shorter shelf life. Okay, they're the produce and they're the fresh cut meats. Some of them are not so fresh, but fresher than something in a can. On beef or something in a can. I mean, that's going to last. The nuclear holocaust. It'll last forever. Have the go off, you still got your canned meat. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to spoil. Okay, so you want to try to choose those things that are not filled with all of the preservatives and the additives. Okay, so back to answer your question. Now that I've rambled on, I will land the plane. Brown, white, dark white, whatever, does not necessarily give you a clear picture of how good that particular food item is. And I know you probably know that. That was just a good way of throwing it out there. When you look at the food label, if you're trying to choose a bread, for instance, okay, because most of us eat sandwiches, you want to try to find one that says whole grain, or whole wheat. You want that whole listed there, okay? Another thing that you want to look at, and if you do this just first, before even trying to figure out if there's a whole grain in there or not, this is a good place to start. A good rule of thumb, and I'm going to flip back to the very first page, it's just in that second little thing here. Protein and then carb underneath it. There's a little rule of thumb that you can use, okay? For every 50 calories, you need at least 1 gram of fiber. It's called the fiber rule, okay? So if you're looking at a loaf of bread, and that loaf of bread has 90 calories and 1 gram of fiber, does it pass the fiber rule? No.